This episode of the podcast, we welcome Amanda Kate to the podcast, who is the author of Divine Messy Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. And on this conversation, one of the huge topics that we cover is how our emotional trauma and the emotions that we store manifest itself into physical symptoms that could be in the form of back pain or neck pain or just general tension that you hold and store inside the body, and then how you actually then go about releasing that energy in order to connect with your true, authentic, and internal self. So I hope you enjoy. So you kind of mentioned that your spiritual journey, that's when you trust that everything that's meant to happen will happen. When did your spiritual journey begin?
It's interesting when you ask me that, because it really started as a child.
Mm-hmm.
We used to go to church and I was always drawn to that environment.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the peace and the singing, and, when people were singing together, there was just this sense of connection and oneness and all of that sort of stuff. And I just found something really magical and special and, otherworldly in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly when it happened. I think a lot of it was my sister's rebellion against all of that kind of stuff. But also then my noticing that, people would go in and be holier than thou and then come out and be the same asshole they were before they walked in the church. And I was like, something here is just not lining up for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, a bit off kilter. And, a couple of people I knew were very, if you're not practicing religion my way, then it's not enough. And if you're not doing this, you're not Christian enough. And I guess it's the same way that, you hear it from people in a lot of different fields. If you're not doing my type of yoga, if you're not vegan, or if you're not doing this type of diet, then you're not spiritual enough. And that just really gave me this, it just felt really misaligned.
Yeah.
When all's said and done, Jesus is a teacher of love and compassion, and he was the one having, meals and breaking bread with the lepers and the prostitutes and the ill and the people who were not worthy of entering a church, And I found it really interesting that they're preaching this message, and
there's a lot necessarily of being hypocrisy that would then happen with a lot of people that preach these values.
And when humans get involved, I think that happens.
Yeah.
Because it's that human, you must follow my church and you must,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, look, I found that part very interesting, and that sort of turned me off for quite some time. And another, number of experiences of seeing it just so in my face was just like, I just don't think this is the right thing for me. And so I kind of went away from all religion, really. And I went, well, it's just not for me. But over the course of a number of years, for example, when I lost my baby, the first thing I wanted to do was go to a church service because I needed to connect into something bigger than me. And so it wasn't necessarily that I got rid of the idea of a higher power. I just didn't like all of the humanness that kind of went around it and the dogma and the ritual and the hypocrisy. And when I got quite unwell around sort of, I guess it was about 2013, I got quite unwell, and maybe even started earlier than that. And I started being drawn towards things that I hadn't been drawn towards before. Modern medicine, for example, was telling me I was fine, and I wasn't. I was unwell. And I just gradually started putting my foot into the natural therapies, and then, finding these authors because of, I guess searching, even though I didn't know I was searching. And so finding people like David Hawkins and Joe Dispenza and, even Brené Brown, although obviously not a spiritual, teacher, so to speak, Eckhart Tolle and The Alchemist, and just all of these books were really coming across my path. And I started playing with that idea of spirituality being my connection to the divine.
Yeah.
Not what somebody else tells me my connection to the divine has to be.
Yeah. And so just getting that individuality piece of it was what made it all make sense to you.
Yeah. Because I'd had experiences where I knew I was being guided by something bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't deny that. I cannot walk in nature and go, oh, there's no higher power.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. I can see it. I can feel it. And let's face it, if we're the highest powers there are, then we're all screwed completely and utterly. Like, I hate to say it, but if we're in charge, we are fucked.
Yeah.
So also knowing that makes me go, okay, so I guess those questions come up of, well, why does suffering happen? And why does this happen? And why does that happen? And getting that more spiritual idea that we can only see this much of it, this tiny little sliver of it. We're not supposed to get the whole picture. Somebody else has that.
So,
and it takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, I think it definitely does, saying that, like, being okay with the fact that we don't have to have all of the answers. We're not supposed to have all of the answers.
Yeah.
I think the idea is to simply go through life being open, and like that is the only point. It's not to find what's on the other side. It's the process of just doing it in general. Yeah. And I don't think there really is an end. I think I am of the belief that I think all of us are spirits in essence, and we choose to inhabit these bodies at certain times, and just to have this human experience. The point of the human experience is not to figure out all of the answers and do all this. It's literally just to be here and have that human experience and feel the emotions and go through it, and, maybe search for the higher power and search for the divine and try to get in touch with that while we're here as well. But doing that with all of these emotions that you don't get, I guess, when you're just, a spirit.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so with you on that. That's exactly what I sort of figure, is that we are these infinite soul beings put into a finite body to learn different things. And I don't even necessarily think it's like a school where you've got to, people talk about, you're here to learn some lessons. I think we are, but in a very, very different way. Yeah. It's how do we go from the infinite to the finite to a body that we know is going to go to dust at some point.
Yeah.
And how do we inhabit that with as much grace and dignity as we can? And how do we find our compassion in those tough moments? How do we find that grace in the tough moments?
Yeah.
How do we, stand in the middle of the most tumultuous times of our life and still have some kind of anchor to something bigger?
Yeah.
And hold on to that.
Yeah. I think that that's just incredibly important to have that mindset in order to go through everything that we go through inside of life. And so I know that you have not always been this open and, this flowy, let's say. So, I mean, when did this mindset of yours really shift? I guess even before that, like, how were you existing before you were open to all of this?
I was ticking the boxes.
Yeah.
I was living life as though it was that balance sheet of, when you go, and you start dating, for example, you've got this list of things that you want in a partner. And it's like I was ticking all the things off in terms of, I'm white, Church of England raised, middle class, got good grades at school, went to university, worked for my dad for a bit, went traveling with my sister for a bit, met a man, got married, had 2 kids, beautiful home, traveled the world. I'm ticking all these boxes. And I'm kind of going, I'm miserable as hell. Yet on paper, my life is perfect.
Fucking awesome.
And I'm going, so why am I so miserable? Why do I feel so broken? And, I was being told every day that there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Every single day. It was constant messaging of, what did you do that for? That wasn't good enough. Or you've worn yourself out doing that. Oh, you're always trying to be this, or you're always trying to be that, or, you're always doing this, or you're always doing that. And every day the goalposts would change. And I was just trying to be the best wife and mother I could be over the other side of the world from my family, because I was in the UK at the time. And I was finding I just felt like I was coming up short all the time. Nothing I did was ever, ever good enough. And that really took its toll on me because, one day everything I did would be perfect. And so I'd try and do that the next day because I just wanted to be loved and cared for. And then that would be the worst day. What did you do that for? That was just ridiculous. You're so this, you're so that. And I mean, there were so many insults. I can't even remember them all now because I've chosen to sort of blank it all out. But there was this constant changing of the goalposts. So I could never even know what game I was playing.
Yeah.
I'd rock up thinking I was playing soccer and all of a sudden I'd be playing water polo and I didn't even know the court had changed. And I'd be like, how'd I end up here? And the whole rules, like it wasn't even, the rules would change. It was like the whole ground would move. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, hang on, I've got to get to know what this expectation is. And then I'd feel like I started getting, the steps.
And you're trying to fit into that one. Again. Because somebody else is telling you to fit into this one, and it's not you making these decisions of basically being like that. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because like where I'm at in my life currently, I wrote in my journal like literally last week, it was like I feel like I was playing a game and I was ticking all these boxes where I should have been happy, and then I had this just awakening, and in this awakening, I now get to choose, fuck that. I'm no longer going to play this game that I've been told to play. I'm going to play my own game and I'm going to play by my own rules now. And I don't give a shit who is following my rules. I don't need anybody to follow my rules. It's just for me. And
I think that's a beautiful point. We all know our own truth.
Yeah.
Therefore, we all have a different rule book.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all supposed to be playing a different game.
Yeah. We're not all supposed to be. We're not all supposed to be doing the same thing. And like, yet the way that we get brought up, and I think that's why there's so much suffering that's happening right now. And so many people are unhappy is because our systems don't educate us in a way of having that individuality. It educates us in a way to follow a system that has been created for us. And that is, in and of itself, that's a paradox. It's never going to work because we're just being told what to do. And so, until we find that individuality, yet obviously we still have to fit into some of these systems, but it's, you don't have to fit it to a T. You don't have to, do all of that stuff. And it just becomes so hard, especially at a young age when we're given all of that information. It's then really easy to then store all of that inside of you. And that's when you start unconsciously making these decisions that are actually going against your true nature.
Oh, 100%. And that was my life. Yeah. I had the intuition that my marriage was fucked up from very early on. But I was told, I would ask people for help. And I'd be told, well, you're the one with the problem. You've got to change. So I thought that, even from the external influences, I was going, oh, it's me, it's my problem. And I'd ask for help and I'd be going, this doesn't feel right. What's happening here? But almost everybody would placate me into, well, that's just the way it is. Relationships are hard. So here's me getting an A plus, but it wasn't hard in the right way. Now that I'm in another relationship, I understand why relationships are difficult because, when we're on our own, let's face it, we don't have to have any form of, I guess, reflection of our behaviors back to us. Whereas when we're in a relationship, we get that, which is what I think one of the most valuable things of finding, I hate using terms like right and wrong, but the right partner for us is so important because, I was with a man in my marriage who fundamentally believed in his own perfection. And therefore, anything that went wrong, of course, was my fault.
Yeah.
Because he was perfect. And he used to say that to me, I am perfect. So it is you with the problem. And I mean, I didn't know at the time that was called narcissism.
Yeah. Anybody that believes that, please don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Jesus did not believe he was perfect. Like, again, back to that. These people, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, these are all of the first people to admit that they are not perfect beings.
They're fallible.
Yeah.
We are fallible in this human meat suit. We are fallible. And part of it, goes back to our basic bodily physiology. If we are not accepted by our tribe, we are cast out into the wilderness to die. That's the way our brain goes to. So our brain goes, I must be accepted by all these people that I am around, or I am going to die, because it's safety in numbers. You think of, when humans were first here, it was very much that hunter-gatherer, being chased by saber-toothed tigers or whatever the
tribal,
hell was
primitive,
there to eat us.
Yeah.
And so our brain, even now that we are predominantly safe, goes into live, die. So when we're looking at the people's behavior around us, we are using that to inform whether we're being accepted or not. And so for me, getting these constant things of you're not good enough, I was in constant fight or flight because I wasn't being accepted. Therefore, the body goes into you've got to keep yourself safe or you're going to die.
Yeah. If you don't fit in, that's like your central nervous system genuinely believes that is an actual threat to your physical existence.
Exactly. And when you're getting other threats as well, I understand now why I've got chronic fatigue. And this is where the GPs and all of the specialists I saw failed me, was because they didn't understand that basic physiological state that my body was in. Whereas with the natural therapist, the first person to ask me about my relationships was a psychologist's receptionist. I rang to book in and she asked me, okay, so, you sound like you're under a bit of stress. I can't get you in with the psychologist for another month. I can't get you into her mindfulness classes for another 6 weeks. You do sound like you're under a lot of stress. Who's got your back? And I crumbled because I went, nobody.
Yeah.
To have that question, and that question in so many ways changed my life, because she said, are you willing to see a kinesiologist? And obviously that sent me down, the path I'm on. Literally 6 months after my first session with a kinesiologist, I was sitting in the classroom to learn how to do it because it had been so transformative. But when you're looking at those sorts of things, where nobody's looking at your support structures, your emotional health, your relationship health, your all of those other things. And, going back to the whole meat suit thing, I love that fact that quantum physicists have proven that the universe is 4% physical matter. So this physical meat suit is 4% of the picture.
Yeah.
So all of those other things, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, relational, financial, sexual, all of those things feed into the rest of who and what we are. And in that, oh my God, it's just, nobody had looked at anything other than the physical stuff that was going on before.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, other people are bringing all of these other bits in. And how much sense does it make when I'm living in constant fight or flight for so many years? My body is literally breaking itself down with chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
How much sense does that make when you're thinking about that physiological bit of being primed in a nervous system all the time to think I'm going to die?
Yeah. So,
and I know that's, it sounds extreme, but that's what our nervous system is doing.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm curious, just from your expertise in kinesiology, I mean, why or how does the emotional manifest itself into the physical?
Oh, look, and I think this is the thing that I love most about kinesiology is that those emotions, what happens so often is we are taught that anything in that feminine archetypal realm, like emotions, like curiosity, like questioning things, is dark, it is dangerous, it needs to be hidden away and suppressed. What is revered is the masculine, the logic, the control, the
rational,
space creation, the rational. Anything else, it's dark and dirty, and please don't show us any of that shit, by the way, because we don't want to know. And as a result, we deny our emotions. And if you think about it, from those tiniest moments, you fall over as a child, there's no blood, get up, you're fine. Well, you know what? What about the fact that I'm a little bit embarrassed that I fell over? My pride's a bit dented. I am actually physically hurt, even though you're not admitting that. Yet I'm being told to push all of that down, suck it up and get up and move on and just dust myself off.
Yeah.
And you think of how many times, metaphorically, we're told that in our life. Get up, pull up your bootstraps. It's not that bad. I've got clients who are going through grief and they're being told by their nearest and dearest to move on. When I lost my baby and I was grieving, I got told by my ex-husband, it was just a baby. You've had one. You can get pregnant again. It's time for you to stop grieving. After 8 weeks, I'm like, yeah, no, this is not, that's not what I'm going to do. That's not what I can do. So what I learned to do was grieve on my own. I learned to hide it. And how many times was I told I was too sensitive, I was too emotional, I was too reactive, I was too defensive, I was too whatever.
Yeah.
Yet nobody's taking responsibility for being an asshole. It's always, it's your fault.
Yeah.
So you look at all of those emotions.
To take in that judgment, and we have to do something about it, not like, if somebody pushes, now when somebody tells me, hey, you need to do this, I'm like, fucking why? Like, no, I don't. If you think I need to do something, that's more of a reflection on you than it is a reflection on me. And it's not easy to accept that. And it's not easy to get there. And like, especially with people you care about, because it's not like everybody's doing it with malintent either. People, like a lot of people do have, like, they think that they are helping you as much as possible, and they really do. So that's when it's really, really hard to have that paradigm shift still, like even when your parents or your partner is telling you these things, it's hard to say, fuck off, I don't really necessarily want to do that. But like, it gets tricky.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is part of that whole emotional into the physical type thing, is that we are trying to discern which bit's ours, which bit's theirs, even though we're not aware of that. And what we do is, if you get told something often enough, you believe it. We all know that.
Yeah.
And when you're having all these messages rammed home from very early that you're too sensitive, you need thicker skin, that was just a joke, why can't you take a joke? Well, I can't take a joke because that was actually mean and nasty, and that's not funny. That hurts. And when people are gaslighting you about those experiences, or when you're sharing something vulnerable and intimate and people laugh or shame you or whatever, we do push that down. And
Yeah.
if you think that we're resisting those emotions, what we're doing is we're fighting against them and they're getting locked somewhere in the body.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're allowing those emotions to flow, we're not fighting them. There's nothing to lock in.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, because those, feminine, nasty, scary emotions,
Mm-hmm.
can't feel that. I'm not supposed to feel that. That doesn't fit in with my perception of self. We're jamming them all down. And it becomes, like those cliffs you see at the water's edge, where you can see all of the layers of the sand
Yeah.
all just pushed down. And we're just pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. And for me, what that happened was I was pushing down so much, I would have these explosions
Mm-hmm.
of emotional vomit. It was like this big volcano exploding, because there was just no room for me to push anything else down. And that was effectively why I had chronic fatigue, was because I'd pushed so much down and hidden so much of myself and refused to acknowledge so much of myself.
Yeah.
And this is where that trauma story comes up, because what's traumatic to me will not be traumatic to you.
Yeah.
In the sense of, anything that we do not find nourishing and nurturing is stored as a trauma in the body.
Yeah. One thing that I just recently kind of figured out after listening to somebody else speak is like trauma. I think where I was originally taught to think that trauma are like the things that happen to you. Like, oh, like
Yeah.
I got yelled at, or like I got hit, or like I was abused. Like that in and of itself is not the trauma. The trauma is how you react to that. So the trauma is the emotions and those things that happen afterwards, and how you work through that. That's what the actual trauma is.
Exactly.
Those things cause the trauma, but that's not the trauma itself, which is why people that seemingly have had great lives and been, done all of these things that may seem like, oh, like, like you've never been through anything traumatic. Well, if they were taught at a young age that they're supposed to just shove everything down, then the tiniest little thing is going to be stored as trauma, possibly even worse than some things where you might consider it a very, very traumatic event.
And I think this is the thing, people used to talk about the big T traumas and little T traumas in trauma-informed work, but actually I think classifying them is already putting it into comparative suffering.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help anybody, because, I had a client who was like, oh yeah, I had a lovely upbringing. My parents loved me. I'm like, yeah, so did mine. Mine loved, they still adore me. There's nothing wrong with that. And we're not criticizing our parents here. Our parents are doing the best they can with the tools they've had, as is every single person out there, by the way. Little secret. We're all doing the best we can with the stories that we've got, with the information we've got, with, the perceptions that we have about life. But those little, say, constant drops of criticism put us into these tiny little boxes. And we end up confining ourselves in those boxes and not being able to move.
Yeah.
Restricting our freedom, clipping our wings, whatever you want to call it, because we're trying to stick to these little narrow pathways of acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
Think of men and the emotional spectrum, for example. You're allowed to feel these three emotions, but anything else, with women, if you show those emotions, you're hysterical, or, whatever it is. We all have these societally expected outward expressions of self and boxes to tick. And that in itself is creating those traumas. And they're societal or religious. Religious trauma is a whole other one. But we have all of these different things. And if we're suppressing it, repressing it, hiding it away, ashamed of it, sweeping it under the rug, pretending that it doesn't exist, if we are denying those aspects of self, they do cause physical issues in the body. Every issue in the body is caused by stress, either physical, chemical, or emotional. And that creates electrical stress because the messages aren't working properly. And so metaphysically, when we go beyond the physical, everything's job is to protect the heart. So the heart is really the last place that will take on stress. So everything else is trying to take on that stress from all that hurt that we've experienced. And we end up with different things bearing the burden, whether it be our shoulders, whether it be our lower back, whether it be our adrenals, whether it be our thyroid. And thyroid's obviously a massive one, especially for women who've been taught that they don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at all of those sorts of things, and all of a sudden the picture starts becoming really clear on how people's physical symptoms are starting to manifest.
Yeah. So you discovered kinesiology, and that was like the awakening for you.
I'd been looking for a long time of what I wanted to do when I grew up, I used to say, because, I was in my mid-30s, kids was, starting school. I'd been a full-time mum because my husband worked away so much and we were never close to family in terms of distance. So I was doing all of the raising of children. And that was, my job. But I knew once they were at school and settled in that, oh God, now I've got to, work out what I'm doing.
what am I going to do for the rest of my day?
Yeah. And you know what?
Just sit and wait.
It kind of felt like that bit where you're finishing high school and you're trying to work out what you want to do after high school. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so lost. I feel so uncertain of my future. I don't know what this is going to bring. I don't know what I want to do. But in those years of having chronic fatigue and still being married, I'd explored all these natural therapies, and I started understanding that the food I was eating was starting to make a big difference to the physical. So I'd cut out gluten. I was really careful with my sugar intake. Apart from wine, that took a bit longer to get rid of because that was my numbing. And I admit I numbed because I had so many things going on. Oh my God, I needed to. It still is my numbing of choice if I decide I need to numb right now. Yeah, I'll still go and get some. We're not cool with that.
We're not perfect beings, no. And that's also what's I think very important for people to understand is
that's the messy bit.
Nobody's perfect. Oh my God.
Hell no.
We're not supposed to be.
No, God no. And you know
if you're also too, like, even using those things to numb it, like, don't, if you're going to do that, don't fucking feel bad about it. Like that you're just creating this more emotional stress and emotional tension that you're just going to store inside of you. Like, be like, hey, I'm going to numb this, but fuck it. I'll enjoy it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I used to say that to my naturopath. I say, I know I'm drinking too much at the moment, but that I am working through this stuff and I'm feeling all the emotions and there's only so much I can actually process.
Yeah.
And so, it gets to the end of the day and I want a glass of wine because I want to switch off from all the processing I've been doing.
Yeah.
And so it was a conscious.
You can't be just constantly flooded with processing and working through this or else you're just going to power down.
It was exhausting. And look, in 2017, for example, so I left my marriage at the beginning of 2016. So it's coming up 7 years now. And in 2017, I did the equivalent of 26 weekends at school because I didn't just do my diploma of kinesiology. I started my advanced diploma. I overlapped the two, which is not usually done, by the way. I did all these advanced courses. I did another modality called TBM, which was 3 modules. And, but I was at school 26 weekends. I was also working with 5 different kinesiologists, plus my naturopath, plus like all these other people. I cleared a mountain of shit that year. And I probably also drank more than I've ever drank because I was going, holy shit, like I'm clearing stuff and I'm doing the work, but I need to tune out at some point because I was so invested in it. And I think using it in that conscious way, and it took me a while to work out that, I'm actually doing this consciously.
Yeah.
And it's a choice because I've gotten to this point. And I'm not saying I was drinking like a bottle a night or something. It might have just been a glass or I may not have drunk for a week, but then I would have, have a few on the weekend, whatever it was. But I know that it was a very conscious way of me shutting down and shutting off and going, okay, I'm going to park everything till tomorrow now.
Helping yourself.
Oh my God, I cleared a mountain of crap. But I think, again, it's the difference between conscious numbing and just numbing.
Yeah.
Is, if we, and I say it to my clients, if you want to go and do a Netflix marathon, then sit down and consciously choose it. Get your cup of tea ready, or your pot of tea, or whatever the hell it is that you want to do. Set yourself up and go, I am tuning out for the next however many hours, and I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I am going to allow this to nourish and nurture my body as downtime. And that's it.
Yeah.
The same way you mentioned, the psychedelics and stuff. If you're doing it consciously, your body reacts differently. When people smoke medical marijuana for medical purposes, they've actually shown that it reacts differently in the body because you're choosing to use it with that intention, not just I'm going to get fucked up and get high. There's a very different reaction in the body when you're using it in that way. And so I always say to people, if you're going to have a piece of chocolate cake, bloody well enjoy it. Don't just unconsciously, shove it down your face. Taste it. Enjoy the thing.
There's been times where to kind of go into just chocolate cake brought this up. Like I used to be pretty overweight when I was in high school, and it was just something that just kind of clicked. I'm like, I'm fucking done with this. And when I did that, but then like after I had lost a ton of weight and I went overboard and did it in a really unhealthy way, I kind of just stopped eating.
As we do.
Was just working out all the time. And then I was like a little fucking twig. After that, the idea of gaining weight afterwards was like such a daunting task for me. And so I would then kind of like, have these unhealthy things. And while I'm having these unhealthy things, I'm already thinking ahead to the next day, like, oh, fuck, I'm going to need to work out more tomorrow or something like that. And I wasn't even fucking enjoying it in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? If you're not going to enjoy it in the moment, there's
I think that's kind of that pendulum swing. We do tend to go from one extreme to the other before we can find that happy medium. And I really love that you say that, because that's how most people live their life. They're not in the moment. You're absolutely right. We're looking forward to tomorrow. We're looking back to yesterday. The forward fear is anxiety. The backward being stuck in is often depression. They're opposite ends of the same stick. And when we're oscillating between the two, how often are we fully present? How often are we truly here? Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Oh, yeah, let me eat this chocolate cake, but shit, tomorrow, what am I going to have to do to get rid of this? Yeah, no, that's not going to work. Exactly. Yeah. So what exactly is kinesiology? Like in simple terms, for someone who doesn't understand and might be new to it. Well, kinesiology, where you are, it also exists where we are in terms of that muscle movement. It's the way the body moves. What we do in our type of energetic kinesiology is we are looking at the way energy is moving through the system, the way the body is talking to each other through the different systems, organs, meridian systems, glands, hormones, all of the different parts of the body. We're looking at the way the energy is flowing. So you may come in with all these symptoms, and yes, they give us a bit of an idea on the picture. But what we're actually wanting to know is the root cause of that. So what was that emotional resonance that got this domino link started? What was the emotional resonance? What was the trauma? What was the event? What started that? What planted those seeds? And then what was watering them? What was feeding them? Because we want to rip that out by the root. Yeah. We want to get rid of that idea. So then it starts to change the vibrational structure of the body. And so we're bringing that subconscious blockage into conscious awareness. And so the way I sort of talk about it now is, people talk about smashing your belief systems and getting rid of your belief systems and changing your belief systems and all of that. There is some truth to that. But the way I look at it is my "who the hell are you" voice is still there. Yeah. It's here. It's over my shoulder. Who the hell are you to be on this podcast? Who the hell are you to write a book? Who the hell are you to? It's still there. I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars trying to shut that voice up. Yeah. But what I've done in the last few years is I've realized that voice isn't ever going anywhere, because you know what? It keeps me safe. Yeah. There are so many, all of our maladaptive behaviors, all of our unresourcefulness has kept us safe.
Have you
Going
read
back to that physiology?
Have you read The Untethered Soul?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book, and that really talks about how that voice that's there, it is never ever going away. So you might as well learn to be friends with the voice and understand the voice rather than trying to get it to shut up, which is what we want to do because it's making us feel bad about ourselves all the time. So naturally I'd want it to shut up. But it's still, even though like it's not you, it's still a part of you. It's an extension of you.
And when we can learn to love those shitty parts of ourselves, our life changes.
Yeah.
When I can hear that voice and go, I hear you. I know you are trying to keep me safe and I love you for doing that. Thank you. And also, shut up.
Fuck off.
I'm not listening to you. Fuck off. You're not driving this show. I am.
Yeah.
You're not leading this search party. I am. I'm in full control of this. Then your life does change because that inner child, that inner teenager, where you developed that habit to keep you safe is wanting to know that the adult that you are now is fully in control.
Yeah.
Has got their back, is looking after them, is protecting them, is safe to be with. And so the more we step out into that, yes, I hear you, the same way you speak to children. Yes, darling, I hear you. I see you. I understand this is scary. And we are going to do it anyway because I know I can keep us safe.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about that too, because a lot of the time, like where that inner voice comes like speaks to us as an adult, it's from that programming that we received as a child. So in essence, it is a 12-year-old trying to keep you safe.
Exactly.
Like that's where it's all coming from, because like we're so malleable in those early years of growing up that like that sets the stage for the rest of our life. And
most of our amygdala programming is pre-2.
That's insane. So
then we've got certain programming that's pre-7.
Mm-hmm.
And so you think most of our programming is done, but before we're 7.
I don't remember most things before I was 7. Although I do remember that I felt like shit most of the time. And so that makes a lot of sense why I grew up and I felt like shit.
Yeah. I never felt lovable or worthy enough.
Yeah.
And I know this was said as a joke, but I was always told your sister was born to be an only child. So I thought that I wasn't meant to be here, that my birth was a mistake. So I've lived my life as though I'm a mistake.
Yeah.
And even when I fall into, when I'm tired, when I haven't looked after myself properly, whatever it is, I still fall into that. I don't matter. I'm not important. I still fall into it. Now I catch myself when I'm falling into it and go, seriously, hun, just go have a bath or drink some water. You're actually fine. You just need to look after yourself a bit better. But again, hearing those voices, and this is where I get a bit, again, with the inner child work, people talk about, let's go and meet your inner child as though there's one of them.
Yeah.
But it's you at every point of your childhood who has this conditioning, who needs comforting in that moment. And what we need to learn to do is step up as that adult and know that that unresourceful behavior is a hurt child or an angry teenager who needs comforting, who needs to know that they are held, that they are safe, that they are loved. And the more we can love those unresourceful parts, the less they arc up, because we're giving them that love and acceptance. So it is loving that shadows and shit part of you, because it's not all love and light. It's, and people who talk about love and light for me are in denial. They're delusional about what life is, because we cannot have light without dark. We cannot have dark without light.
Yeah.
The whole, the Chinese yin yang symbol.
Happiness without sadness.
Exactly. And we are equally light and dark. The more that we love our dark, the less unresourceful it becomes and the more of a superpower it becomes.
Yeah.
But all my shitty behaviors are still there. I still do crappy things because I'm human. I got home from work last night and I was grumpy. Oh, guess what happens? I'm human. You know, did I stay grumpy all night? No.
Hmm.
But I was grumpy
Yeah.
because I felt like I'd had people feeding on me all day. And I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I just need some me for me.
I need to sit with myself. And like it's
Yeah.
almost like when you're getting all this information from other people, like even as these now much more evolved spiritual beings, we're still receiving all of this input from other people that naturally for survival instincts we want to take in, and we still want to actually make it a part of us. And then we get home and we're like, hold up, let me find my true self again. Like I need to I need to see what's applicable and what's not, and sort through that and figure that out.
Yeah. And check back in. Where am I at? How am I doing? You know?
That
and I
sense
think
of
that's why it's a spiritual practice.
to practice. Yes. It's never like you're, enlightened beings. They don't just become enlightened and then like, all right, I'm done. Like it's ongoing evolution until we pass from these bodies into whatever else there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it. We are constantly evolving and learning. You know, the onion metaphor where it's, there's always another layer.
Peeling back the layers.
I used to go, why can't we just put it in the blender and blitz that fucker up? Like let's just fucking blitz this onion. But it's not the way it works. And I think, obviously that's where the onion metaphor falls down, because you do get to the center of an onion. We never get to the center of ourselves.
No.
Because every day we're facing stress. And we're living in a world that is challenging.
Yeah.
That is hard at times in very different ways than our ancestors had it hard and challenging, of course. But it is hard and challenging. And we face that every day. Yeah. Of course, we're going to collect stress.
Yeah. And I think what true divine happiness and love is not getting to the center of that onion. It's actually just literally going through the process of continuing to peel back the layers. And as long as you are always trying to peel back the layers and realizing that there is no end, I think that can help you get to that baseline of happiness that exists in all of us, of happiness and love. We are loving beings. We're built from loving energy. And there's so many things in our life that try to take that away from us and make us forget that there's that love, but we're infinite sources of love.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point. Although with happiness, almost every client that comes into me, what do you want? I want to be happy. I go, well, happiness is one-dimensional. And if you were happy all the time, you'd be manic, and we'd actually need to put you on medication.
Yeah.
And so
true happiness is not feeling happy
that
all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like happiness, I think that's also one of the important things. It's like, peace is probably much more accurate, but like to me, I now can I consider joy to be that feeling of when I'm feeling happy in a moment, and then sadness is the opposite of that. But like happiness is the overall baseline, which means like I can be really, really sad in a moment, but my overall state of being, I'm still really happy. Because I'm sitting there and feeling that sadness and feeling that human emotion that happens. And then on the flip side, I feel a ton of joy. And in my previous versions of myself, I'd feel that joy and I would try to just fucking hold on to it as much as possible. And then I'd build this attachment to that joy. And then once that would happen, then I'd fall down into the depression because I no longer see that joy and I don't know how to get back to it. And so having those attachments is harmful.
Understanding that all of those emotions are fleeting.
Yeah.
That
the good ones and the bad.
Yeah, exactly. But what we're taught, make hay while the sun shines, enjoy it while it lasts. We're taught that the happiness is fleeting and that the pain is going to last forever. Yeah. And the more that, I sort of talk about it as having built that sanctuary within myself. So even when everything's going tumultuously out of kilter outside of myself, I still have this place that I can anchor into. And that is that place you're talking about, whether you call it happiness, love, connection, whatever the hell you want to call it. I have this sanctuary within me that I I do use as a tether. I do use as an anchor for myself so that I don't get blown away with all of the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
This too shall pass type feeling. Yeah. Okay, I just need to get myself through this bit. I've been through stuff before. I'll go through stuff again. People think that you go through that dark night of the soul and you come out the other side and it's all, sunshine and rainbows and love and light. But, the more I've done the spiritual work, the more I will go into dark nights of the soul in certain ways. And also, I do navigate them with more ease, with more grace, with less
I find myself enjoying the dark nights sometimes just as much, if not more, than the moments of like pure happiness and joy for whatever weird fucked up reason you could think of. But like, it's just all part of it. Like it's all the same. If you look at it as just all the same, I think it becomes easier to do that. Yeah.
It's informing you what matters to me. What do I still need to hold on to? Am I holding on to something that I don't need to hold on to?
Yeah.
For me, sometimes it's me having a death grip on a paradigm or an idea of the way things should be. And it's teaching me, bitch, let that go. Like, seriously, what the fuck are you holding on to that for?
Yeah.
And it will be, because I'm literally, I've got my fingernails in and I'm holding on for dear life. And it's like, babe, that's not serving you.
Mm-hmm.
And you let it go and you're like, all right. That actually could have been a lot easier if I just let go of that sooner. But, that's the way we learn.
Here we are.
We want to go and do it the hard way because, that is often how we learn. Yeah. And still having that anchor inside of us. And that's the bit that I developed, was that bit where I could anchor into it and go, okay, and now what?
That's amazing. Thanks everybody for listening. And thank you to Amanda for coming on the Trip Sitting podcast. If anybody is interested in learning more about Amanda or getting in contact with her, just go to her website, amandakate.com.au, and that'll have all the links that you would need in order to get in contact with her or also order her book, Divine Messy Human. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode.